Arsenal, new stadium. Man City, new stadium. Liverpool, redevelopment. Spurs, new stadium. You look around and the only one that hasn't been redeveloped has been Man United's Old Trafford. It's reached a stage where it's infested by rats. It's an absolute disgrace for a club, an institution the size of Manchester United.
Liverpool go to Leicester, everyone says, Leicester, what a season they're having. Oh, they're the new pretenders to the top four. Bang, 4-0, sit back down, watch the procession.
Hello there and welcome to Goal Headquarters. Today we're talking about dynasties. English football has been dominated since the dawn of time by two sides. Man United are technically England's most successful team, but their legacy has crumbled since Sir Alex Ferguson left. Liverpool had the 70s and the 80s, but spent the next 15 years without consistent success. Now under Jurgen Klopp, they look set to secure a 19th league title, but are they on the verge of domestic domination again? To investigate the reasons why the two teams are moving in different directions, we're joined by Peter Staunton. Hello there.
Hello.
Hi, how you doing?
Not bad.
Good. Kurt, how you doing, Neil?
Peter.
I'm good, thank you.
You right?
I'm good, thanks, yeah.
So I'll start with you as Liverpool correspondent. What is it about Liverpool and the current formation of their team that is just why they're so far away from everyone else?
Yeah, well, I think it's an obvious answer, but it's consistency, and it's consistency of performance, of lineup, of the common goal really that the players share, and you know it burns brighter at Liverpool. I think the desire to win league titles than anywhere else in the country at the moment, and obviously with good reason. Never won the Premier League and closing on 3 decades without any kind of league success. So I think you marry all that up, and you marry up good recruitment, good coaching, and good mentality within the squad, and hunger and desire within the squad, as well as excellent footballers, and you know you put all them into the mixing pot, and it's got all the makings of a pretty good team. I still think they've probably surprised even themselves with the levels they've reached in the last 18 months. But yeah, it's not a bad time to be a Liverpool correspondent. I'll give you that.
No, it must not be. Is it over though? Is it over? Is it done?
I think I don't want to be the one who's on camera saying it's over, but I think it would be truly incredible and probably a sackable offence for the manager and the entire squad if they didn't convert it from here. But yeah, given the way last season panned out after January onwards, I think there'll still be an air of caution around the place. But with each week that goes by, each box that gets ticked, it looks more and more likely that it's just an inevitability.
Looking at the opponents this weekend, it's Man United, the other dynasty of English football, really. Is it an oversimplification to just say that it crumbled when Alex Ferguson left?
No, that's true. And I think the most damaging thing you could say about the back end of the Alex Ferguson era at Man United is that he left nothing there. You know, one of the tests for a company I remember reading before was could an organisation like Apple survive the death of Steve Jobs? And Apple did. You know, it's moved on to bigger and better things since Steve Jobs passed away. Did Manchester United survive the end of Sir Alex Ferguson? No, it didn't.
Because they did. They won the league the last season he was there. But are we saying that it was just like that was the last hurrah for those players and that particular kernel of that group? Well,
you look at why they won the league. They bought Robin van Persie at 29 for probably 2 seasons that they were going to get out of him. They spent 25 million, took him from a rival, or a former rival, if you want to call it that. That wasn't the way Manchester United had operated. You look at the great Alex Ferguson sides built around. The first one was obviously his first great side, the early 90s, was built around, you know, flying wingers and experience in defence and key areas. Great signings such as Schmeichel, Cantona, who were sort of, you know, under the radar signings that paid off big time. Then you look at the second team he built, was built around the youth players, and Beckham and Scholes and Giggs still, the Nevilles. And then he refreshed in the, you know, sort of after the treble, and they had a bit of a fallow period in the early 2000s. He refreshed by buying the best young players around: Rio Ferdinand, Wayne Rooney, Cristiano Ronaldo. Ronaldo left, Carlos Tevez left. You know, he looked at people like Berbatov, who were short-term signings, and then he looked at obviously Van Persie. And when you look at the team that he left, I think people said it was a miracle United won the league. I think the reason they won it was because they bought the best centre-forward in the league, and they still had Wayne Rooney behind them feeding. And once that legacy had gone, once the manager had gone, and you'd replaced him with, you know, not even a B-Tech version of Alex Ferguson, you'd replaced him with, you know, a mid-table Premier League manager, David Moyes. It was always going to be a challenge for them to maintain that.
So yeah, since Ferguson left, the way that United have behaved as a club has been very dissimilar to the way they did under Ferguson in the sort of the stability, if you like. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think you're right, but that's because under Ferguson it was a dictatorship. I mean, there was nightclubs in Manchester who had pictures of his players up and wouldn't let them in if they wanted to get in there. He had spies all over the town. Nobody could do anything around that club without Ferguson knowing about it. And those power structures have been stripped away totally within football these days. A head coach nowadays is a head coach because you have somebody in charge of
player liaison and stuff.
Exactly, and you've got people in charge of recruitment, and you've got people in charge of analysis, and they all feed in to the other parts of the club, and the head coach is responsible for getting the team out on the pitch on a Saturday or a Sunday. So the problem with Manchester United is by putting David Moyes in there, seeing that the work that he did at Everton, they thought that was going to be his graduation from being the boss at Everton to being the boss at Manchester United. But that's not the way you can run a modern football club. Alex Ferguson was the last of a dying breed in English football in particular in that regard. So at that stage, they had to tear down the edifices that Ferguson had built and start from scratch. Now, the problem for Manchester United is they didn't really have the expertise on the football side to create those new structures. We had somebody like Edward Woodward who's still in place as executive vice chairman now. Yes, he can sign deals for tyre partners, noodle partners, coffee partners all over the world. No, and that's not to do down what Ed Woodward has done, because United have grown to be probably the richest English club that there's ever been because of their commercial success, and that's largely dependent on Ed Woodward. But he just didn't have it. That same nous that was required to do deals, it just doesn't carry over into football. You need people who have the experience within the football field, and you can see their transfer strategy is probably epitomises how poor Woodward has performed.
Are there parallels that can be drawn between the way United have sort of behaved as a club since Ferguson left, in terms of that sort of change and not knowing what their identity is anymore? Can you draw parallels to what the Liverpool team at sort of the start of the 90s, when they dominated the 80s and then they lost their way a little bit at the start of the Premier League?
Yeah, a little bit, and they lost the manager from the 80s as well, in Kenny Dalglish, for different reasons obviously, but they lost him in the early 90s. A lot of the revisionism around that suggests that he left obviously for his own health reasons and that, but there was also a worry that he was going to find it difficult to break up the team that had been so dominant, and he was going to find it difficult to replace and replenish the squad. You look at that early 90s and it's full of players on the way down. Rush, Barnes, McMahon, Whelan, Nicol, all these Grobbelaar, great players who had done so much for the club, but were going to have to at some point be phased out and replaced. Liverpool, if you look back at that era, they probably had a few of the players that could have done that. Robbie Fowler was coming through, Steve McManaman was coming through, Jamie Redknapp had been signed. There was David James was signed sort of at the end of that. What they didn't have was the cutthroat nature at the club to say, no, you know what, we're gonna do this. And they also took a manager on in Graham Souness, who a good fit if you looked from the outside, but when he got inside the building and you looked at what he was doing, he was a wrecking ball that was taken to something that didn't really need that. It maybe needed a steadier hand, a more cute style of management. You could easily imagine a situation where they'd have gone into that slipstream of Manchester United, where they'd have been one of the dominant forces, but they didn't. They finished sixth. They finished the worst league position I think for 35 years.
You mentioned earlier on about the modern club and the way things are run these days, and Klopp is at the forefront of Liverpool. He's the face of success at the moment. But looking at the different ways in the way the two clubs have been run over the last 10 years, say the Glazers at United, John Henry came in with the Fenway Group at Liverpool. How much of it is down to that and the recruitment that they put in place when they came in? When
it comes to the Glazer ownership, I think Man United have been in managed decline since day one, since the Glazers came in, and the only thing that kept the club buoyant in sort of the first half decade, 7-8 years after the Glazers came in was the momentum that Ferguson gave not just the team but gave the entire structure of the club. And even in sort of shareholder summaries, they would outline the fact that the success of this football club is built around the personality and the achievements of Sir Alex Ferguson. And if he goes, there's a very real chance that we're not going to have the same level of success that was written there. They knew that was coming. So the danger is you could almost sum up the Glazer era for Man United in two things. I would say that if you look around the stadium developments on all the other big major European clubs, and I'm not just talking in England, I'm talking about Barcelona redeveloping Camp Nou.
You mean the actual structure?
The actual structure of the
structure.
stadium.
Yeah.
Real Madrid currently redevelopment Bernabeu, Atletico Madrid new stadium, Bayern Munich new stadium, Arsenal new stadium, Man City new stadium, Liverpool redevelopment, Spurs new stadium, Paris Saint-Germain redevelopment, San Siro is about to be destroyed, Juventus new stadium. You look around and the only one that hasn't been redeveloped in the last 30 odd years, 25 odd years, has been Man United's Old Trafford. It's reached a stage where it's infested by rats. When it rains too heavily, that's that Sir Bobby Charlton stand. The leaks that come down there into where we work inside the stadium. It's an absolute disgrace for a club, an institution the size of Manchester United. What they're trying to do at Man United is sweat the asset for as much as they can and then sell it on for profit. So becoming a successful or maintaining success as a football club has never been at the heart of the Glazer project. It's about making as much money as they can from an already successful asset.
So is that where the main juxtaposition and the main comparison between the way the two teams have evolved over the last 10 years, is that basically what it's down to? Because at the heart of it, at Liverpool, it's completely different, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say 10 years at Liverpool because there was bleeding before.
They were close to going,
after, yeah.
Close to administration themselves.
And even after FSG took over, you know, they made mistakes. They had Damien Comolli as a director of football for 6 months. They had Kenny Dalglish as manager. After, you know, they fell into the Solskjaer trap of that one in a way. You know, a good 6 months as caretaker, and then he nearly brought success in terms of domestic trophies, or he did bring success, but he wasn't the right man to take that modern version of Liverpool forward. They had that really horrible 3 months of Brendan Rodgers where they should have sacked him, and they didn't because they didn't really. They felt they owed him.
He had money in the bank a little bit,
didn't he?
He
Money in the bank.
Yeah.
They should have appointed Jurgen Klopp then. They'll say they couldn't have got him. They could have got him. We know that, you know, Jurgen Klopp's pretty much said as much as that. And I think if you look at the summer there, I think if you look at the signings Liverpool made, no one will tell me that they didn't have Jurgen Klopp in mind when they were making some of those signings. Roberto Firmino, James Milner, people like that. They've made mistakes, but what they've done is they've learned quickly from them, and they've still managed to put aside their ego, I think, a little bit, and to admit that, you know, yeah, we're learning on the job, and we need people in the right positions. And you look at the comparison with United in terms of the football and structure, it's night and day, you know, in terms of the people who are in the key recruitment positions, the manager, and the faith that they have in him and the belief that they have in him. If Jurgen Klopp was replaced tomorrow by Thomas Tuchel, let's say, or, you know, Mauricio Pochettino, how many of those players would he want rid of at Liverpool? I don't think he'd want rid of very many. Now, let's say Jurgen Klopp took over at Manchester United tomorrow. What do you think the first thing he's going to do? He's going to look at that and go, right, I need him, I need
500 million.
He's got to go, I need a new goalkeeper, I need this, I need that. You know, that's the test of a manager's, I think, structure, or a club structure, sorry. Liverpool, over the last 5 years, I think, since Klopp came in especially, I've got more right than wrong, whereas Manchester United, I think, are still searching for that strategy that they need to get back to the top.
Do you think that, I mean, even since Klopp has come in, it wasn't immediate? It's happened over time. There's had to be patient, would you say, in terms of assembling and getting to this stage where they are now?
Definitely, because although they came close to winning the league that year under Rodgers, I don't think, hand on heart, I don't think at the start of that season any Liverpool fan was expecting them to make a run for the title that year. You know, it was quite a patched up kind of team. You know,
it was a momentum
thing. Yeah. So. But I think what they had with the personality around Klopp and the pedigree that he had, Champions League final, 2 Bundesliga titles with Borussia Dortmund, against a Bayern Munich team who were very much the overlords of that league. I think Liverpool, they saw a guy who the fans would immediately pull behind. It wasn't the case they could just blame the manager for the failings of the team, as happens in every other club in the league. As soon as a manager loses 3 matches, his head is on the chopping block. That wasn't going to happen to Klopp because he had already demonstrated that he could do it at a team that didn't have the same number of resources as the biggest teams in the league. So I just think that there was a perfect fit right from the very beginning, and no matter what Klopp did in order to get the momentum going within the club, I think he always had that credit with the supporters. No, this is a guy and he's going to get it right. Even the stuff going to the cop when he's beating his chest and giving it the fist bumps, you know.
People on the outside, Jamie Webster, that sort of stuff, going and visiting him, that sort of.
People on the outside are laughing about that, going, "Oh, look at that! Hey, they're European champions. They're European champions." So this kind of stuff.
Are they laughing about that?
This.
He's not just wishing that was them.
I think a lot of people liked, I mean, Joey Barton was one, wasn't he, who famously said he's just a cheerleader, and I think you can get a few people who think it's an act. And I spend, you know, a fair bit of time in his company at press conferences and matches, and I don't think it is, you know, and speaking to players about it, I don't think it is. I think he's just a naturally sort of, you know, a person who likes being around other people, which that's one thing. It's not a dictatorship like a Ferguson where you don't, you know, he's sort of, you're terrified to bump into him in the corridor or whatever because he might smell your breath or look in your eyes and see if you've been out the night before. It's not just, you know, him picking a player and saying, I want him, and if I don't get him, I want him. It's him saying, okay, what have you given me? What's he good at? Okay, right, I can do this and that with him. Name me a player that's gone backwards under Jurgen Klopp. There's not many.
Exactly, yeah.
Speaking about that, looking at the sort of the future, if you like, do they have enough there to dominate, say, like a Dynasty would?
It's difficult to say that, isn't it, with the modern game, because you know nobody has they really. I mean, Real Madrid had 3 Champions Leagues. Did they win the league in that period?
They did, yeah.
Yeah, they went once, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the one that the league and European Cup double for the first time, I think, in about 60 years.
Yeah, you know, Barcelona tends to win one or the other. They haven't won the Champions League for, what, 5 years? Yeah, you know. So Manchester City, with all their resources, still haven't won a Champions League. They look like they're not going to win the Premier League this year, so even they can't dominate with those things. So it's difficult to say that Liverpool can dominate, but they can certainly be in a position for the next 4 or 5 years where they, at the start of the season, can realistically expect to challenge or win for the Premier League and the Champions League, which is the mark of a true top club.
You know, there's nothing wrong with Liverpool's players. They're high class, world class players in a lot of cases, but people's motivations are very, very different. You know, how to get the best out of people, and whether, you know, you look at the Leicester team that won the league, you know, that was almost the one cause of celebration in the entire careers for a lot of those guys. And what happens after that? They all sort of dissipate and fall away. I don't think Liverpool sees themselves as the same sort of club as Leicester, where they win the league once and then that's it. Everybody celebrates. It's the underdog effort that's finally paid off. You know, you've got 4 years more guaranteed of Klopp there. You look at Salah, Firmino, Mane, Van Dijk. The core of their team are at a good age. You wouldn't say a great age for going on to dominate, because those guys are late 20s now. So you would say it has to be the next sort of 2 or 3 years. Once those guys start getting into 31, 32 years of age, you wouldn't expect a team of that age in any natural life cycle to start dominating leagues.
I think the other thing as well is, you know, we saw the Deloitte list earlier this week, and they're in a strong financial position, Liverpool. So it'll be interesting to see whether they capitalise on that in terms of strengthening the squad before they need to replace the likes of Van Dijk and Salah and Mane and whoever else, whether they can get those building blocks in place for the years to come.
What do United have to do to be mentioned in that conversation again? I mean, is it going to be the same situation? Is it like when Liverpool's last dynasty ended? Are they going to spend 15 years in the wilderness before success comes back?
Yeah, they will, because look, it's 7 years now, and how close are they to winning the league? Honestly.
Far.
They're far. They're going to have to jump over probably at least another 6 or 7 teams before they get into the reckoning. And how are they going to do that? The only way they're going to do that is with consistent results. Do they have the manager in place to deliver consistent results? No, they certainly do not. Their best player wants to leave, Paul Pogba. You would say that the amalgam of players that have been the club have been left with from Moyes, where you still have Juan Mata, Marouane Fellaini was signed that year as well, Louis van Gaal, Falcao, Di Maria, Bastian Schweinsteiger, Memphis Depay. You know, it's just, there's ghosts haunting that place. Then you move into Jose Mourinho, it's the same thing. But you have remnants of all these squads just still sort of floating around, and you've got players on, you know, upwards of 140, 150,000 a week who are performing nowhere close to those levels. Players like Luke Shaw, for example. Who's going to take Luke Shaw off Man United on that wage? And the last thing Mourinho does is gives him a contract before he goes. You know, the mind boggles.
Brandon Williams coming through as well.
Brandon Williams coming through, but you've got his reserve is sitting there hoovering £1 million a month. What's the point? What's the point? So, you know, those things, those deficiencies need to be sorted out in the short term. And then in the long term, they need to get a coherent style of play under the manager that they want to take them forward into the future. It's not going to be Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, let's be honest. And then they need to get the recruitment strategies in place. What is their recruitment strategy right now? I have no idea. They're signing Bruno Fernandes. But, you know, just as easily, They could sign, I don't know.
Erling Haaland being one where it's, you know, oh, he wants Manchester United, bang, he's gone to Dortmund. You know, you see Takumi Minamino, you know, United were furiously briefing, no interest in him from Salzburg. Well, a lot of United fans enjoyed that, you know, United said they weren't interested. Well, why weren't you? Well, what were you doing then? You know, you're proud to announce you weren't interested in this player who's been really good in the Champions League this season for £7 million. Good, well done, you know, you've had a good win there. But there's a lot of that about, and you look at Ferguson. We keep going back to Ferguson because I don't think you can avoid him. You know, it's a little bit like Wenger at Arsenal now, isn't it? Where that's going to be the sort of comparison all the time. You look at who they signed. They signed surefire hits so often. Ruud van Nistelrooy, he was always going to score goals for them.
Especially with that service from the entire midfield.
You know, Roy Keane early in his career, best player, best player outside the top clubs in the Premier League first season. Yeah, Roy Keane, brilliant signing. You look at Teddy Sheringham, always going to do what he did. Andy Cole, record signing, goal scorer at Newcastle. Dwight York, same goes for him. Then you look at Rio Ferdinand, Jaap Stam, Ronaldo, Rooney. They were all top level players, and you knew what you'd get from them. You look at United now; they're filled with, you know, look at the centre backs. Lindelof, 30 odd million. Eric Bailly, 30 odd million. Harry Maguire, 80 million, and Rojo, 25 maybe million.
There's 200 million centre backs there.
You couldn't make a good defender out of all four of them. You couldn't make a world-class defender if you put all four of their attributes together.
And then compare how much Liverpool spent on Van Dijk.
Yeah. I mean, that's more in the Rio Ferdinand bracket. That you pretty much knew he was going to be top. You pretty much knew that Alisson was going to be top class.
Fabinho as well.
Yeah, and Fabinho. Yeah, their gambles came with people like Mane and Salah, but they were more calculated gambles than United, who spent double Salah pretty much on Di Maria and couldn't get a tune out of him. I think it's best summed up by the state of the defence really. And you look at you know, they've got Luke Shaw, Ashley Young as full backs. They've got Wan-Bissaka as a step in the right direction, but them centre backs. That's three different managers have signed them, and none of them have been able to get much out of them.
Cool. Looking at Liverpool,
Phil Jones is still there.
Another one. Yeah, I mean, he's
how much is
Ferguson.
Phil Jones again?
Yeah,
it was
about
like
20 million.
Yeah,
But he's from the Ferguson era, isn't he? You know, and Chris Smalling as well, still out on loan. He's still got that. So there's 6 centre backs, and I'll extend it out. I still don't think you could build a world class one out of all of them.
No, but Liverpool do have that. And thinking about that, and in terms of their current team, how do you think they measure up to the kind of the best teams of the Premier League era? The '94 United team, like the '99 team, Chelsea's Mourinho's first team at Chelsea, the Invincibles.
Do you mind if I take this? Because I've been doing my research.
Oh, go on.
Okay, right. I think that it's much harder to be a better team now because the resources are so big, not only for the top, let's call them the traditional top 6, but you're in a situation where even, you know, we had a look at the UEFA. Their financial report came out during the week, and you know, you have clubs like Huddersfield making more money because they're competing in the Premier League than clubs like Juventus in broadcast revenues competing in Serie A. And all 20 Premier League teams have access to better players than any of their European rivals. So it's much harder to be a good team in the Premier League nowadays because anybody can buy a good player. Now, if you look at the historical norms, let's say over the last 10 years or so, the teams that finished 6th, 5th, 4th and 3rd last season didn't do an awful lot worse in terms of historical averages, points totals, than the teams over the previous decade. You need 65 points roughly to finish 6th, and so on and so on and so on until you need maybe 73, 74 to finish 3rd. That's all been in line with the historical trends. Where the difference has come is that Manchester City took 198 points in the last 2 complete seasons, and Liverpool are not far behind. That is unprecedented. To be that consistent every week, 38 matches. Liverpool didn't drop a point between March and May last year.
Yeah, and didn't win the league. Lost 1 match all season. That is scarcely conceivable as a standard. They've drawn 1 match all season long against Man United, as it were. For me, the mark of a good team is not, you know, we've always said that maybe Real Madrid were lucky in certain matches in the Champions League, even though they won 3 of them in a year. The mark of a truly great team is, can you do it every week, 38 times in a season? And Liverpool are doing that right now. And they're doing it with a squad that people would love to go, well, he's not very good, or he's not very good, or they've not got very good backups. They've got Origi, they've got Shaqiri, they've got Joe Gomez. You know, hey, every week these guys are putting it up. They were out their goalkeeper 9 or 10 matches. Adrian goes in goal, no problem.
This is a phenomenal Liverpool team, and I think it would give any historical Premier League team a run for its money. And if they win the league this year, I'll go out and say it. It is. It's the greatest Premier League team of all time.
So is that it? Is it the parameters are so different now because of what Man City did that they just can't be compared to anything that's gone before?
Yeah, it's different. It's a different sport, isn't it? You know, you look at Arsenal won the league 97, 98. I could tell you they're 11 now.
Yeah.
You know, I could off the top of my head, United's treble, you can say that. And those teams were exceptional teams, and you know, they would. You speak to Tony Adams or you speak to Roy Keane and say, we'd beat this Liverpool team, we'd beat this Manchester City team, and they might do. Mourinho might think, no one's beaten my Chelsea team, but the fact is that Manchester City are the highest achievers ever in Premier League history in terms of the points, the 100-point season. Liverpool are on course to match that, better it potentially this season, and that's a fact. What would you rather have? Would you rather win the league 77 points, 24 wins and 14 draws? I think that was Arsenal, the invincible side. I think they never lost a game, but they still were fallible in that regard. Or would you rather be the team that, do you know what, Liverpool's still on course to win 37 games this season, and you know, take out the Manchester City away game, where are you taking a point off them? Where, you know, at the moment, looking at it now, where are you saying they won't win that? Was
it 45 matches since they dropped a point at Anfield, something like that?
Yeah, well, they haven't lost at Anfield at all since 2017. You know, it's just absurd, isn't it? You know, the record is, we can remember teams going on great unbeaten runs. Arsenal went on one 2001-2 where they scored in every game, and that was seen as a massive thing. Well, Liverpool have scored in every game this season. And I think they will score in every game probably this season. Liverpool go to Leicester. Everyone says, Leicester, what a season they're having. Oh, they're the new pretenders to the top four. Bang, 4-0. Sit back down, watch the procession, and that's the level that they've got. That's the level City have got. Oh, City are having a terrible season. Go to Villa, 6-1, easy as you like. They're capable of all kinds of football, and I think for that reason, you have to put City as the benchmark for all Premier League teams. And if Liverpool match that and then topple that City side, I think you have to put them in the conversation as well.
If they're better than the best, what does that make them?
Exactly.
The guy that beat the guy.
The guy that beat the guy.
The lineal Premier League champions.
Yeah.
I think we could talk about this all day, but I think we're going to have to leave it there. We've run out of time. Thank you very much for coming in today, Neil.
No problem.
And you, Pete.
Thank you.
And what do you think? Do you agree with Neil and Peter? Do you think that Liverpool are ahead of another dynasty? Are United crumbling, and are they ever going to come back? Let us know what you think. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.